Hello and welcome. Today we're making some really good brownies, super rich and super sweet. This recipe comes from the King Arthur Flour Company and turned out to be some great super fudgy brownies. They were a little bit sweet for my tastes. They also had advice on how to modify that to be a little bit less sweet, and we'll talk about that in a moment. For now, here's what you're going to be needing. For our ingredients, you will need 4 large eggs, 1 1/4 cups cocoa powder, 1 teaspoon salt, 1 teaspoon baking powder, 1 tablespoon vanilla extract, 1 cup butter, 2 1/4 cups sugar, 1 1/2 cups all-purpose flour, unbleached, 2 cups chocolate chips, and optionally, which I did not use today, 1 teaspoon espresso powder. First, we will want to preheat our oven to 350 degrees and grease a 9x13 baking pan. This will help make the brownies easier to get out and helps make the outside ever so slightly more crispy. You could use flour to make it a bit easier to turn out, but for reasons I'll talk about in a moment, I don't recommend doing so. On your stove, set to the lowest setting you have, you want to combine your butter and sugar. You want to melt the butter and dissolve as much of the sugar as possible. The more sugar you get dissolved, the more shiny the liquid is going to look and the more shiny the tops of the brownies will be. They say to keep this between 110 and 120 degrees. I was actually worried that the baking soda might activate, which was kind of dumb of me, and I only let it hit 110 degrees here, and as you can see, mine ends up with a very dull top with some shiny spots, but most of it not quite. So that's because a lot of the sugar failed to fully dissolve for me. I actually checked, and newer baking powders activated at about 160 degrees, so if you were worried about that like I was, you don't be. 120 degrees is the way to go. You want to get it up there so that as much of that sugar is completely dissolved as possible. Once your mixture is shiny and more well dissolved than mine, sadly, you are ready for the second and third mixes. As always, I'd like to thank everyone for watching, liking, and sharing the videos. It really helps the channel grow, and if you're not already subscribed and enjoy this video, subscribe for more like it, and of course, pictures of our fuzzy overlords, the true stars of the channel. For our second mix, while the sugar and butter are melting in the pan, we can mix most of the rest of the ingredients together. In a large heat-proof bowl, you'll want to mix your 4 eggs, cocoa powder, salt, baking powder, and vanilla extract. You want to mix this until it's as smooth as you can get it. Kind of. I started this with a light-duty whisk and had to get a heavier whisk because the batter at this point can be super stiff depending on the size of your eggs. So don't be like me and just start with your lightest whisk. Just start with the heaviest one you got. You'll probably only take you about a minute or two for this. Or use a hand mixer or a stand mixer and you'll get it done a lot faster and a lot more efficiency. Now, for our third and almost final mix, we take our mix that we made in the heat-proof bowl and we want to add our sugar and egg mixture to the cocoa batter until it's smooth and shiny. This is going to take a few minutes. Just start out slowly and speed up as more mix is mixed. Once it gets moving, it just goes super fast from there. Once that is fully mixed, we want to add half of our flour, mix that about halfway, and then add half of our chocolate chips, then get that flour fully mixed in. Now we add the other half of the flour, mix it about halfway again, and then add our final half of the chocolate chips and mix until smoothish and shiny. Smoothish because you will have some partially melted chocolate chips left as you see here, which kind of look like lumps, and is actually why I divided it up like this. I will actually explain that in a moment. Once it looks like this, you are ready to pour the batter into your pan. Into our 9x13 pan we go. You want to make sure to get the mix as level as possible. Since brownies of this type don't really rise much, any lower spots that you accidentally don't get covered can kind of end up being comically visible, like serious dents. Quick note, if your pan is metal, you may need to add a minute or two to the bake time for this. Glass bakes a touch faster on the outsides, and since this is a very thin brownie, it can take a minute or two more if you're using a metal pan than it would if you're using a glass like I'm doing here. And into our preheated oven to 350 degrees we go. This will take about 28 to 32 minutes. And sadly, as you get to see in the background, this is not the most exciting footage to talk over, so I'll try to be a bit brief. These turned out to be almost too rich and sweet to eat by themselves. According to the site, you can reduce the amount of sugar by up to 25% without negatively affecting the texture. That would be about 1.68 cups of sugar, so I think just using 1 3/4 cups of sugar would serve you well and make it more of the sugar dissolve more easily into the egg mixture, resulting in slightly less sweet, but probably more shiny brownies. The reason we divided up the flour and the chocolate chip mix was to make sure that half the flour at a time so that prevents the flour from clumping or reduces the chances of it happening. And then by putting half of the chocolate chips in first, those chocolate chips are going to be almost fully melted. And then the other half of the chocolate chips that we put in after we fully mixed that and mixed part of our other flour in, that mixture's had a time to cool down, so it's not going to melt those as much. So there'll be some chocolate chip chunks in there, and I like that in the brownie. It gave it a better variety of textures. To test if this is done, sadly, you need to dig a small hole in the center. It should look like a moist crumb like this, and that means it's done. You could probably even be a little bit more moist than this, so long as it looks like a crumb and not gooey batter or gooey crumb. You should be fine. Once it's done, cool on wire racks for at least an hour, or until fully cooled, or until you just can't wait any longer. And with that, we've made some really good brownies. I would suggest serving them with ice cream or whipped cream. This will help cut down on how rich they are and let you enjoy them a little bit more. This is also why I don't advise using flour on the pan, since it'll make the exterior of the brownies look, so if you're serving them with like whipped cream or something, it'll make it look a little worse due to the white powdery spots. So that kind of skips that, and that's why we did that. So as always, I would like to thank you all for watching, and as always, I hope you have a great day and a great meal.